All right. So today we are discussing about perimenopause and creativity.
Oh, can we stop a moment?
Yeah.
Stop there.
Okay, today we're going to discuss about menopause, a lived experience with Letitia Turnbridge.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, Letitia, please.
Okay, well, I've had a good long think about this, and I through my work, I'm a poet, and through my work, I've done some work working on perimenopause and menopause, and I'm now postmenopausal, so I'm moving to another phase. So the talk I was going to give today is menopause, a lived experience. I'm not an expert. I'm a woman who has moved from before, during to after. So that's who I am and my background. So I've got a couple of slides to share. So let me just do that. Okay.
Yes.
And the button might begin. Yes. No. Menopause. There we are, lived experience. So the first question to ask is, do you talk about it? Valeria, you obviously do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you talk about menopause?
I now do talk about menopause more than before. Firstly, because I am yet to experience menopause. I've been thinking ever since we did our first workshop, am I in perimenopause? Because I've got many symptoms, many aspects of what you've listed, like being cold and forgetful and dropping things. But is that just me? So yeah, I do now is more in my mind, really.
Okay. So previously, it's a question for everybody. Do you talk about it? And if you talk about it, who do you talk about it with? Peers, people your own age group, multi-generational conversations, with men, with women, with children? That's the question. Do you talk about it?
I've been talking about it with my mom and my grandma as well. And I've asked them what was their experience and what runs in the family, if it is something that can happen because it happened to them. And yeah, they've got very different, both of them, they've got very different life experiences surrounding menopause. And yeah, it feels that this is something very personal, very individual, that it is not something that is passed on, the experience of it.
That's interesting. I wonder if your mum and your grandma had spoken about it previously, or whether that was the first time they discussed it, because I think it's something more, the younger the age group, the more likely you are to have spoken to older generations. I think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that because I'm doing this research and hosting this project, it is in our conversation. But before, no, I believe we never spoke about it outside of this context.
Yeah, interesting. And I think that might be quite common for a lot of people. Or it might be that when a person arrives at these strange symptoms in the perimenopausal, for those that aren't aware, perimenopause is the term used for the period leading up to menopause and slightly after. So menopause is literally when you stop bleeding. So that's when menopause is. But people talk about menopause generally interchangeably with perimenopause, because that's the period around the menopause and the effects around the menopause. So I might interchangeably say menopause or perimenopause during this talk. I'll try and remember, but
Yeah.
it's very common that people use the two interchangeably, although technically they're different. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is something, well, before the previous time we talked about it, I didn't know that there was a perimenopause. I always assumed the menopause was the whole thing. From when you stop bleeding up to, well, I don't know when, maybe when you finish to have certain feelings or physical sensations.
Okay.
Now it's clearer.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Okay. So moving on then. 8 out of 10 women will experience symptoms before and after menopause. That's according to the NHS website. So 80% of women, that's 80% of half of the population of the world, are experiencing symptoms before and after menopause. So we need to be talking about it. We all need to be talking about it. Everybody needs to know about it. All the age groups, all the genders, everybody needs to talk about it. It affects a lot of people. And as the NHS, if the NHS has said it can have a significant impact on daily life for some women, I think that suggests that it really does. It really does. So that's why I find it interesting how many people do talk about it and how many people don't. And it's still one of the subjects that a lot of people don't talk about until they maybe reach that age, and then they don't talk about it with their partners necessarily, they don't talk about it with their children, but it affects everybody around us. They don't talk about it with their employers, which is another thing I mentioned in the perimenopause.
Yeah. It feels this absolutely entwines with the taboo, societal taboo of menstruation, periods. So I think that putting them together in the same societal taboo, because in a sense they are all to do with the same circle. Yeah, this is not surprising, unfortunately, but definitely it is something that affects everyone, even people that don't experience it.
Absolutely. So just going back to my screen share there. Okay. Oh, I'm so good at this tech again. There we are. So according again to an NHS source, on average, most symptoms last around 4 years from your last period. So that's the post-menopausal symptoms they're referring to. And just with the post-menopausal symptoms, 1 in 10 women experience them for up to 12 years. So that's 10% of women. That's a significant amount of the population post-menopause. And that's not referring even to the perimenopausal lead up symptoms. Okay, so I personally went through the menopause. I'm officially menopausal some point during lockdown, because to be officially menopausal, it has to be 12 months since your last period. So in fact, it was probably before lockdown, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's a very confusing time when you've had a year that doesn't really count.
And yeah, it's a year of a Sunday or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So from my experience, I had a number of issues. I had quite a few perimenopausal issues that I learnt were perimenopausal through conversations with friends, with peers, with women just slightly older than me. I worked in an office with a lot of women, and I was one of the younger ones. So there was discussion, which was really positive help for me.
Yes.
Yeah, because as you've mentioned, my mum's experience was quite different to her sister's experience. And I don't know about my granny's experience except secondhand through my aunt. So, yeah. So it can look so different For example, my mum had a very early menopause. She had a late child at 37. And she didn't really have a regular period after that. And then it just tailed off and there were no more periods. But she certainly had symptoms ongoing, mood swings and various other things. Whereas my aunt, and apparently my grandma, according to my aunt, had both finished at 44. And once they finished, and that was that. So
Clean.
Different experiences in the same matrilineal line.
Wow, I never heard that word.
I might have made it up. Never trust a poet with a word. Yeah. So yeah, it can be very different. But I want to share with you now a poem that I've written. I'm going to share it with you here. Right. Okay. No, I've lost you. There we are. Press the share screen button, Letitia. Forgetfulness is a very common symptom. So this is a poem I did entitled Textbook. I'm hoping you'll be able to see that.
It's just the perimenopause, he said. It's quite normal, he said. It can last up to a decade or so, he said. The good news is you're not menopausal, he said. At that moment, I wished him woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's from a short series of poems that I created around perimenopause. And that came from a genuine experience because I thought I'd stopped and then it started, and I thought I'd stopped and then it started, and it was a long period of time. I had no periods. A long period with no periods.
No periods.
A long period with no periods. And then they came back. So I went and had a test. And that's when the doctor came back and said, oh, good news, you're not menopausal, which is very confusing when you've had no period for 11 months.
Yes.
Yes.
So there is a test.
There is a test. I have no idea how it works, but I think it's looking at the level of hormones in your body. An expert can advise you on that, not me. I know there's a test though, because I took the test and I wasn't menopausal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must be frustrating to feeling all of these different movements in the body, emotional status and physical explosions in a sense, and being told, oh no, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's just normal. It's fine. It's just normal.
To whom?
Yeah, exactly. And normal doesn't mean that you have to live with it. That's the important thing. It might be normal, but there are still things that can be done to assist, to help, and there's various different remedies that people look at. The book that I mentioned in the previous thing, Menopause, I've forgotten the name of it.
Was he Maisie Hill?
No, anyway, we'll pop that in the links.
Yep.
Yes, so there are a number of symptoms that you can do things to alleviate. I mean, there's the medical route with HRT, there's alternative therapy routes, there's lifestyle routes, there's many things that people use to help ameliorate the effects of the symptoms of menopause. You can't stop the menopause, but you can stop such wild mood swings, or for example, and I know a lot of people, I took some magnesium particularly to help with that, and various other things. So yeah, so although it's perfectly normal, which means that a lot of people have it, doesn't mean you have to live with it. You can still, if you are suffering extremely, seek help, look at ways to deal with what you're living through.
I agree with this. And I feel that for me personally, the non-medical route to go more natural remedies and aliment to look at what we eat and how we eat, what we drink and all of this, it really helps the body, and in a way that is very primal, natural. And of course there are certain symptoms that can't be alleviated in any other way than in my case, painkillers for certain migraines. Nothing else works. But it's what I feel it seems most frustrating is that it's deemed as normal. It's deemed as nothing you can do about it. There is no manual.
80% of women have symptoms.
Right.
Doesn't mean it shouldn't be looked at. It shouldn't be investigated. It shouldn't be talked about. It shouldn't be made the best of.
Yeah, I've had a look at the website you shared last time about this organization person that hosts menopause training for workplaces. And that seems to be an excellent way forward to educate, understand, inform, and prompt some change. Yeah. Have you been following some non-medical? How have you been?
Personally, I didn't have any medical interventions. I have friends who have gone down routes of HRT, and friends who've gone down the routes of the merino coil, which is a coil which lets out a certain hormone to counteract
hormonal treatments effectively.
With various, some have worked for some people, some have worked for other people, some haven't worked for any of them. My experience, what did I do? I don't remember, which is a good classic symptom of menopause.
One that I have already.
I don't remember enough. I was going to mention actually your migraines. Have you had those for a long period of time?
Since I was 15. Now it's better.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of things. So I have been lactose intolerant when I was around about 17, and that caused migraine. So I've been in a non-dairy diet for 3 years. That didn't really help. I wasn't lactose intolerant at the end of that 3 years, but migraine still arrived. And I've done brain scans, MRI, blood tests, name it. You name it, I've done everything. I've tried everything. Have
you kept diaries of where they are in your menstrual cycle and things like
exactly. Now in the last 3 years, I've been using a mobile app for sort of looking at the period and the cycle, the menstrual cycle. And I log every time when I have migraines, and they tend to happen in a very regular way. So I think that this is absolutely my cycle. So they happen 2 days before menstruation, before the first day of the cycle, and then around about day 12 or 13 in my cycle. So I understand that this is, it is so constant that it's not casual.
Yeah.
But then there are other factors. When I'm stressed, particularly stressed, it goes there. So everything is physically
Everything
in
is
the
always worse when one's stressed. But it's
Yeah.
interesting, I think, because they're so linked to hormones, but that's never the first thing that the doctors look at.
Yeah, I've done some research, well, medical research in hormonal treatments and all of this. And because I had an episode of severe cramp pain in August 2020, I went to a gynecologist to see what caused that. Nothing showed up. It seems I wasn't even asked how my cycle was, if it was regular, irregular, how it was. I have all the data for 3 years, and I haven't been asked that. The resolution for this doctor, and I think for every kind of normal doctors, is to do a scan to see if there was something in the ovaries, because I had particular pain. Nothing happened there. And the resolution was, oh, it must be some hormonal imbalance. Let's put you in a pill. And I was like, no, that is not hormonal imbalance, because I would have severe differences in my menstrual cycle. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. So I went in another route. I went into homeopathy, which many people, it does works as a placebo effect at first. And I'm happy with that, because if the brain can cure it, why not? But it's also based on plant remedies, which are the basis of any medicine. And I have to say, I've been on this treatment for almost 3 months and I haven't had migraine.
Interesting.
I had it one a couple of days ago because I was editing heavily. And that's it. And I've had it during last period. But then all is fine. So I'm very happy I didn't go in the hormonal treatment route, which is very devastating.
Well, it's interesting you say that now. That's just triggered something, because you asked what I did. During my cycle. I was on the pill because I had PMS syndrome. Yeah. So I had huge fluctuations in my emotional state, and I was very angry on the day that the egg came. I worked eventually, and then I was very down just before my period, and there was just the periods in between. There's the spaces in between. So for me, I did follow the hormonal route in as much as I was on the pill. And then when I got to 40, they wouldn't let me go on the pill anymore because I was too old. So I tried a hormonal implant, and that didn't work so well for me, in that it stopped my periods, which seemed like a good thing at the beginning. And it did even me out, but what it did was even me in an ever decreasing way, and I was getting more and more down. But because it was so gradual, it took me quite a while to figure out what it was. And also, I was eating all the time, like constantly grazing, constantly. Yeah. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who had a similar implant, and she'd had hers taken out because she'd read some websites and things. And I was a little bit skeptical at the time, because sometimes, you are when you're feeling like that. But I did look at I looked into it a lot more. And there were many women who'd said things like the constant grazing, when you just feel that you have to keep eating, and you never feel full. Yeah. But you never feel that hungry, but you just have to.
Yeah, like instinctive need of eat.
Yeah. And if I didn't, I felt quite weak. So it kind of, yeah. So I put weight on when I went on the pill initially. Then it kind of settled down. And then when I went on the implants, it went up again. But then it didn't go down again because I was eating all the time, eating. So I had the implant removed. Two things happened. One was very unfortunate, that the person that removed it was a junior doctor who didn't know what they were doing, and they kept grabbing it, and they because I had it removed before the end of the 5-year period.
Yeah.
3 year, I can't remember. And because I kept grabbing it, when they took it out, I think they'd squeezed a large amount of the hormone. This is my theory. A large amount of the hormone into me. Because that night I was literally had shakes, and I was I was going to call an ambulance. And I thought, no, it must be this. It'll be fine. But I was really, really ill for 48 hours afterwards. But then after that, suddenly, like a switch had gone and my mood changed. And I found that I wasn't eating all the time. I could, have a meal, leave it.
Yeah.
The next meal time. It was an amazing, just as soon as that initial, and I think that was because of the weight was removed. It wasn't just pulled out. It was grabbed and squeezed and grabbed and squeezed. So that was an amazing thing. Hormones affect everything, basically. And we as women are more susceptible to variance in hormones, and therefore we suffer the consequences.
Yes. Yeah. But you know that I was on the pill for, I think, when I was around 17 till 24, 25, I'm 31 now. And during all that time, when people are on the pill, the period is faked. Mm-hmm. The body doesn't produce the hormones, it's just guided by the hormones of the pill. Mm-hmm. In a sense, I never had a real period for the number of years, which caused, it was fine. I didn't have cramps during the time, and I only took the pill to be safe in the relationship that I was in, to be out of troubles, really. But then I decided to stop that. I didn't find it fair that I had to put some chemical in me to protect us. It didn't feel good anymore. So I've stopped. And from that moment, things started changing because the body said, wow, I have to take reins now. So cramps started being increasingly more painful, considering that I didn't have ever cramps during the pill, but I had migraines all the time. Mm-hmm. But now, well, in the last 3 years, but especially this year for COVID, because I've been at home, living here, working here, studying all the time at home, I had time to look at myself and to listen to the body, not to take painkiller when I feel in pain, because I could actually lie down. And that has awakened a specific interest in what's going on. That's why if I can, I am not intending to take any hormonal treatments, because first of all, it feels to me that people don't know exactly what they're doing. That I was passed from one doctor to another. Finally, a nurse in my GP surgery had to assign me to a pill. And I was given the name of one, and I knew that I can't remember right now, but there are the two main hormones, estrogen and estrogen. I knew that one of the two caused migraine and blood clots. So because I'm prone to migraine, I shouldn't take that one, but I was given
progesterone only one.
Yeah.
One is progesterone only and the other one is
estrogen and progesterone. Exactly. So that was the first mistake that this nurse made, to give me one that had both, and I knew I had to just one. Then I've got a history in the family that one of my aunts died because of cancer in the ovaries. So there are things that happen in the family that for some odd reasons, they haven't been registered, although I've mentioned them constantly. So it feels to me that it's not safe nor needed right now. And I feel that being aware of what happens in the body, it's a very good action to take upon ourselves, I feel. Not that we know everything, but having a diary and understanding the patterns, the repeats, if it is regular.
If you have patterns that
repeat. If you have patterns, exactly. This is where.
So I think that's really, really interesting. But I do think equally for some people, I mean, when I was on the pill, without the pill, as you say, it stops the cramps, it stops so many things.
Yeah.
I couldn't have maintained my working life without having that hormonal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. And sometimes it depends on your physical circumstance. As you say, this year, it
Yes.
being a bubble year, a year when you have time and space. And I think a lot of people have found a lot of things with the year, like your natural rhythm isn't necessarily the rhythm of the 9 to 5 office or working hour office, you know. So, and particularly I think this year women have discovered their rhythms are so much different. I mean, I personally am known that I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person at all.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it this morning that even when I was at school, when I was at junior school, I was always late.
Yeah.
I've always been late in the morning. I'm fine later on in the day, but in the morning I'm always late. And it's because I can't get myself going. It doesn't work for me like that. My body doesn't work like that. But I'll work at 10 o'clock at night, or I'll work at midnight and I'm fine.
Yeah.
But for other people it doesn't work. But the way that the society structures work life had prior to COVID structured work life
Sure.
meant that I could be in an office at 9 o'clock and not be effective at all until 11. So they're paying me for 2 hours of just sitting there with my brain's not working. Then I have to squish everything in before 5 o'clock. But with flexible work, I mean, I did have flexible working, and I began at 10 and I finished at 7, and that worked better for me and for the organisation because they got a day's work out of me instead of 3 a day's work out of me. So, you know, it's a huge difference, really. Yeah. Anyway, we've slightly digressed.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. So I was just thinking again about menopause. I'll just share my next screen. There it is.
Yeah.
So this is my friend who insisted I quoted her in full. No wonder they call it the menopause. And she put a dog picture in it. She says it's the menopause because one of the common experiences of a lot of people is sudden lack of interest in sex.
Right.
So not for everyone and not for long, different periods of time for everybody, but that's she's very keen on saying that's why it's called the menopause. Stop the men, in her experience. So that was where that came from for her. And she said, dogs not men. That's her working theory for menopause. So how can you tell when you've reached the menopause? Just mentioned the medical point is 12 months.
Yeah.
Not having had a period for 12 months. So I've spoken to a few of my friends in a purely unscientific way, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of us, experiences of 4 of us. So I'll just show you that. So when you reach that magical 12 month period, it can be so difficult. So for me, I had stopped and started 7 months, then it all began again. I was like, oh. Then 11 months, yay, and then it all began again. Oh. Yeah. Then 3 months. No. So it was, I would say it was 5 years when I thought, this is it, and it's not. This is it. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to know when you're there or whether you're perimenopausal and having these fluctuating symptoms. Another friend of mine who I've called R, she thought she'd had an early menopause. She'd not had a period for 14 and a half months. Technically she's menopausal. It was an earlier menopause, but she'd had some, she had polycystic ovaries, so she'd been unable to conceive. And then she had an early menopause and she thought, oh, well, that's it then. And then after 14 and a half months, she started feeling a bit off, just not quite right. And her mother, which is really interesting because her and her mum don't get on at all. And her mum's the least emotional person that you can think of. Her mother looked at her one day and she said, you're pregnant. And she went, oh, don't be ridiculous. I've had a period for 14 months. She went and got a test, found she was 5 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she just started a new job. And she then had to tell them after 2 weeks of being a new employee that actually she was 5 months pregnant and needed some time off for scans and things. And they were just mortified because she'd not mentioned it previously. But then
she didn't know. She didn't know.
But they didn't believe that she didn't know.
All right. They
thought she was just, I don't know, just trying to hide it. But she really, really had no idea. It was a surprise. You know, after spent 10 years trying for children unsuccessfully, no period.
Goodness.
And all of a sudden she had a baby. She now has 2 children and is menopausal again.
Yeah.
Or actually menopausal.
Actually menopausal. Yes.
Menopausal.
So that must have been, the 4. Oh, goodness. How confusing.
Yeah.
How startling.
Yeah. So one of the things to remember is just because you think you're menopausal and you're not wanting children, don't stop birth control. It's important.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, when I was younger, I never really understood the surprise babies that people talk about. This was our surprise, the later child.
Yeah.
But once you understand that, I mean, she's not daft, my friend, she's really not daft. And she was quite aware of her body and her polycystic ovaries and so she was aware of her body.
Yeah.
But for everything to have stopped, you've given up, and then suddenly you discover you're pregnant. It's just,
that's a shock, really. I mean, good. Yeah. Because they wanted it. It seems that after all, it was a very good news. But
imagine that you weren't planning children, and
then,
I think I understand now the surprise babies and the late babies and the unexpected children, because you were so, how can you just accidentally have a child 20 years after your last child? But it all makes perfect sense when you realize that your body might have told you you've stopped now, you're not capable of bearing children, we've stopped the reproductive cycle. Oh, by the way, you're pregnant.
Change of our mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's a one of my experiences was, I've gone off track a bit. One of my experiences was that the triggers for this reignition of the menstrual cycle, of the fertility period, can be like a last-ditch attempt with the body that can be triggered by an emotion or a strong emotion or something. And quite often it's when it's called a mother of the bride syndrome. So just when your child is getting married, your daughter's getting married, for example, suddenly a lot of mother of the brides discover they're having a period when they haven't had them for a long time. And it's the last thing they wanted just when their child is getting married, but they suddenly have an unexpected period. And in my case, after the 11 months, well, I've actually got a poem about it. Shall I read you my poem?
Please.
Do you know, I've not got it prepared. That's naughty, isn't it? Not sure which book it's in.
But it's very interesting. I have never heard of the mother of the bride. You said syndrome?
Yeah, I think it's referred to as that, colloquially.
It's more of a jargon way of saying. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem impossible that strong emotions trigger the hormones to react. I think that maybe even a strong life-changing situations, like being in an accident or being in a moment of the either is going to end the life or is the beginning of a new life of someone else's is really triggering. Yeah.
Absolutely is. Okay, I'm just looking for this poem for you.
Yeah, and while you search, I just wanted to share something that I've been thinking of having children probably on and off for the last 10 years.
Okay.
Now I am with my boyfriend for 5 years, and we talk about children, but I want to be very certain of when to have a child. And what you've told me, this person that you know, that she discovered to be 2 weeks in a new job with a child, that sort of situation, it's something that I think is the terror of many people that can bear children, because of course it does sounds a bit weird, that you've just 2 weeks in a new job, hey, I'm pregnant, that's so fun, isn't it? But then the workplace feels to be the most unwelcoming space for people that can bear children because there is this resistance to it. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I don't have children. I chose not to have children, but I don't know if I could have children actually. But anyway, I don't have children. That's the point.
Yeah.
But one thing I do know is that there's never a right time. Everybody I know will tell you that. It's the time that you feel is right and when your body complies. So you might decide. I have got one friend who managed to plan their children and have them on cue as planned. They planned their partners had their birthdays 3 months apart, so they planned the birthdays to be in the months in between, so there's 4 months in a row, and it worked for them. It worked. It just many people, it doesn't work like
that. I've been told by people that have tried having children in these years that it's not the easiest thing to make a child. It's just that's the problem with some films. They make you they picture it as if
they picture it as Fiona's experience, not as everybody else's experience. I've got another friend who spent 10 years trying, more or less gave up, and they've now got a child. So it's, if you're thinking you're ready, just go for it, and then it'll happen when it happens.
Yeah, exactly. from now on.
From now on, yeah. From this point on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. So I found my poem. Actually, I've been lucky enough that I worked with some students at NTU, Nottingham Trent University, and they were in the graphic design team at Nottingham Trent University. And they invited, I think it was 6 local poets, and we gave them some pieces and they worked with them. So I'm going to show you one of my poems in the format that one of the students has created for me. So let me share the screen. So there we are. So yeah. So this was from a little series called Bloody Poems that I gave them, which was 5 or 6 poems. And I'll read it for you. It's called Starting Afresh. My body breaks the drought with a flood of blood. Me, unprepared after a dry year, feel familiar, unwelcome sensations resurface. Weight of breast, low ache of stomach, seeping moisture, self-consciousness. My buoyant mood leaks away. I'm in a field, in someone else's camper van, blocked in miles from any provisions, with the first man of any interest for years paying me attention. Too much for the hormones. I'm not allowed any fun. They see to that before it's begun. Bloody vengeful body mine.
Oh, I picture that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those experiences. I was literally at a music festival in my friend's camper van. So I was mortified that I was going to get blood everywhere and I couldn't clean it. I was at a festival, there wasn't facilities. I had nothing with me because for 11 months I hadn't had a period, and I thought I was over that. And yeah,
they are.
I had a huge, heavy period, which is just not what you want in the field.
Yeah. To me, this is a recurring scenario, although I am quite regular. As soon as there is a holiday book, as soon as I am to do something, I know that's going to happen right in the day.
Mm-hmm.
The day I really can't have it, it will happen. The day one of Wombenhood project, I had it. All four or three of the collaborators and people presenting a Wombenhood have had their period on the day they present the number one. So it feels, that's why maybe this trigger of emotional
Absolutely
hormones really chimed with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always, I don't think I've ever had a holiday without periods. All the time. As soon as I was on a plane, ready to
I think you've frozen.
Yeah, I think I was a bit frozen before. Yeah, but
okay, yeah. Flying, I used to find that flying, whether you're due one or not, as soon as the plane took off, that's when my body went, ooh, throw it all out.
Oh, but you know that hostess and people that work in the air and they move, they have very regular hormones. I mean, to me, it's totally normal going from one time zone to another. That is not only different because we say so, but the globe is physically in a different time of the day.
Okay, yeah.
That really changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're very subject to change in the sense.
Well, we're in a different position to the moon.
Yeah, that has been. Yeah, that's always something interesting to think about. How are we in relation to where we live?
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slideshow now. Share the next bit with you. Yeah. Okay, so we looked at no, it's not, it's doing nothing anyway. So as I said, I've had false starts. My friend R believed they'd stopped and found they were pregnant.
Yeah.
V, yes, V had one huge last period. I talked to you about V's experience. So V had one huge last period. It was completely bedridden for 2 days. She said, to quote her, she said it felt like a miscarriage. She'd previously had a miscarriage several years before, so I believe her. That's how she described it. But then after that, that was it. Nothing more. So her ending was very specific and clean. And she said it felt like everything came out, and then that was it, which was very, in my experience, quite an unusual experience. But that was her experience. When I was talking to her, she said, yeah, no, that was my experience of menopause. I said, yeah, but what about beforehand? She said, oh yeah, and for a few years beforehand, and it's still happening a bit now. I did have frequent, huge power surges, which is her hot flushes, power surges. I said, yeah. And along with them came some emotional changes, because she's a very good friend of mine. I was often with her. If we were in the pub and she had a power surge, she had to immediately rip off all her clothes, and we all had to stop the last layer going. And she was just like, get them off me, I'm so hot. And but also she would also become immediately really irritable and angry and quite aggressive, which was not in character at all. So it was all linked with this power surge thing that she had. And there was the year leading up to her menopause, she was hugely emotionally volatile. Hugely. She'd gone from like this. She's quite a sparky person, but you know, maybe within this range, and suddenly it was within this range. A huge difference that year. She was just a completely different whirling dervish person. We were all like, oh, yeah. So I can imagine somebody who has a change that dramatic would be the sort of person that would have been put in the madhouse as a woman, a mad woman.
Yeah. Oh God, I just realized.
Yeah.
Of course.
That would be somebody
right?
having that huge hormonal change for that period. Now she's absolutely fine. She's lovely, completely different. It was just that 1 year.
Yeah.
Not recognize the woman before or after. It was amazing. But when I said to her, so what was your menopause? Oh, it's just that one big period. But actually, when you talk to people a bit more,
things start merging. Yeah.
There's more things to it.
I think I'm gonna have a more thorough conversation with my mom and my nan, maybe together. Just to,
the other thing she said, she was the one that said the menopause. She was the other person. So she said sex was off. Sex was off that year. Sex was off. She also got lots more dogs. She keeps rescuing dogs, but she suddenly got 3 more, and we're all like, "Oh, that's a lot of dogs." She went, yep, menopause, pause over men.
Yeah,
that was how it affected her at the time. Yeah. Whereas S, oh, I've used a different initial for a different person. Okay, that's why it confused me. There's 2 S's, so that's why I was like,
yes.
Okay, so I'll have to call her S1. I can't call her a different initial because in my head I'll have the wrong person. So S1.
S1.
Her experience was that her periods just got lighter and lighter, and the gap between them just got a bit longer and longer, and then they just tailed off. Very gentle, sort of.
Quite nice way to say goodbye.
She said she wasn't quite sure when the gap's getting longer and a bit more erratic, but they were becoming lighter, and then they just tailed off. So that was her experience. She didn't have the huge hormonal fluctuations. She didn't have the big mood swings. She didn't have weight gain, which is another hormone-related thing, because your weight gathers in different places. So S1 had a very gentle, go for the S1 option if you get the option.
Actually, I was about to say what should be related as the normal gentle.
Well, yeah.
Oh no,
what is normal? That's the thing, yeah.
Exactly, normal to who? That's always the question.
Yeah, well, one of the points I was going to come on to, actually, which I'll mention now as we've come up to it, is that there's been so little research in how much these fluctuations in the perimenopause especially are hormone related and menopause related. Because, or the theory is because there are so many other factors affecting people at that period of their life. Quite often it's the same time that you're becoming if you have a family, you might be becoming empty nesters, and at the same time you may be taking on caring duties for older generations. So there's often a lot of external factors changing in the lives of people at that time, which is harder to calculate what's attributed to what, because many of the perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms could also be symptoms of other things, like you mentioned the stress and the migraine. Headaches can be due to stress, or headaches could be due to hormones. Headaches, memory loss can be due to having so much in your head, stress, or it could be related to the hormones. So that's why there's been so little research on what actually is it, because it's hard to separate the two. So yeah. So S2 S2's experience. She said she had an early menopause. She was in her late 30s, mid-late 30s, and it was brought on, she believes, by stress, poverty and grief. So lots of big emotions there. She was, her period stopped when she was caring for her father had an accident, a life-changing accident. He became paraplegic. He was bedridden. He could do nothing for himself. And lived in France and she lived in the UK. So she was maintaining a full-time job in the UK whilst going over there to try and sort out his care and do as much for him as possible, living with somebody with a precarious financial position, and it was just very, very stressful. So her period stopped then, but they never restarted. She lost a lot of weight, but when she got back to herself and her life had resumed its course, it never came back. So she had a very early menopause, and she believes that the osteoarthritis symptoms that she had began early, and she thinks that's related to the hormonal changes, which is one of the things post-menopause that women need to be aware of, is bone density, osteoarthritis. So that was her experience. So I think I've given you the 4. You had V, V with her huge hormonal fluctuations, S1 with her nice gentle tailing off, S2 with her very early menopause due to stress, me. So and yes, the one with the thought they'd finished, had a child, now finishing again. Had 2 children, now finishing again. Yes, that's my very scientific discussion with my friends. So I just want to finish up with, I think I've got a couple of slides left. So we've talked about that. So menopause in the balance. I was thinking about the balance of menopause. This is my personal weighing up of the pros and cons, because there are pros as well as cons.
Surely.
Of post-menopause, life post-menopause. So just kind of during menopause, there's the unpredictable highs and the horniness. There's no more bleeding. You can choose your underwear. There's no unexpected pregnancies post. As I said, don't forget those. Surprise. Post-menopause. Less concerned, less worried about what society thinks, what people think, and of how you look or how you choose to live your life, I think. No more periods. I've put that twice because for me it's important. So on the cons of the menopausal period, there's the unpredictable lows, which come from the opposite of the unpredictable highs. Lack of sex drive, huge changes in perceptions of your own attractiveness. And I think part of this is related to the idea of the invisible woman. When you reach a certain age, you become invisible. And that's partly about self-perception as well. And the weight distribute with the hormonal changes, you're not just your weight, but your fat distributes itself differently on your body. So even if you maintain the similar weight, you might become a different shape. And I think that affects people psychologically as well as physically. It's the end of the natural childbearing opportunity. So if you're looking to have children, a menopausal weight gain, as I mentioned, and there's bone density issues that I've mentioned there. So if you Google menopause, there we are. Symptoms vary from person to person. That's the most important thing.
The first one.
It's really interesting that it says heavy bleeding might occur for a day or 2. hot flushes, sweating during the night, vaginal dryness, itching, pain during sex, UTIs, mood swings, fatigue, weight gain, and that list that we discussed last time in the workshop, the 32 other symptoms. And another friend of mine, I was telling her, said, don't forget nosebleeds. Nosebleeds. She started having nosebleeds as she's perimenopausal.
Oh.
And I said, oh, that's interesting. She said, yeah. And I mentioned it to a few of my friends, and I'm not the only one. Other women at that point in their life have started having nosebleeds, which is really interesting. Because when I was approaching the beginning of my periods, when I was like 10, 11, I kept having regular nosebleeds.
Oh, at the beginning.
Yeah. So I think that's a hormonal change thing as well. So blood is coming out of your nose. Like, it's different blood. I appreciate it. I know it's different blood. I do know it's different blood. You know, something with blood and happening at women at either end of their thing. So I just thought that was interesting.
Nosebleeding.
Yeah.
I think that I remember my nan, she has osteoporosis, or she was prone to osteoporosis. And I remember as a child, she always took my nails and looked, because if you have, well, luckily I have just a super tiny bit, but if you have some white parts in the middle of the fingernail, that means that you are lacking calcium, which contributes to the osteoporosis issue. So she was always grabbing my fingers and like, look, you need milk and juice. So I've been eating a lot of Parmesan, which is very high in calcium.
And broccoli. I think it's broccoli.
Broccoli, seriously?
Yeah, I think it's broccoli. I might be wrong, but broccoli. I was looking up, I'm sure it was calcium, and I was really surprised. It's either calcium or magnesium, but I think it's calcium. Maybe it's both. Check out your broccoli. Eat your broccoli. Eat your greens.
No, maybe you can relate to this. I feel that sometimes I'm hungry of very specific type of food or veggies, and this is because there is some lack of the nutrients in the body. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. I used to have real carrot cravings. Absolutely. Carrot cravings.
Sometimes it's just
then I discovered I was low in vitamin D, which carrots are high in. So your body tells you what it is you need.
It's unsurprising because, of course, for me, this shift from Sicily, sunny, hot, to the UK, gloomy and dark, I've been deficiting vitamin D a lot, and I always have carrots. They are not, I actively tried not to have as many, because, you know, if you have too much or anything, it will lead to other problems. But I always had to have carrots. It's just, I needed.
You needed carrots.
Yeah. And even I think that when people don't like certain food, it's not down to taste. So I don't like the taste. Is maybe that there is something to do with the fact that you can't digest it. I really like the taste of what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. You see, forgetfulness. That's always with me.
It'll come back to you.
The red one.
Peppers?
Peppers, yeah, precisely, peppers. I can't. Even as a child, I can't, and I cannot digest them.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they're not for you.
They're not for me.
No.
I love the taste, but I can't digest them.
Peppers are something strange that they're in the same family, isn't it? Is it the no, not nightshade family. Peppers have got. Is it potatoes and peppers are in the same family?
I don't know.
Peppers. Tomatoes and peppers.
Maybe.
I ought to know. I can't remember. But one of my friends, the husband of the person with the unexpected baby, there's a particular family of
Those
vegetables, that he can't have, and I'm always saying, oh, well, just have it. Oh no, because that unexpectedly is part of that family group. It's the peppers and something.
It might be tomatoes.
It might be tomato.
Yeah, I've been intolerant to tomatoes for a while.
What I find is interesting is how that changes over time, over our lives as we become. I had a friend who suddenly became hyper allergic to nuts in her 30s.
Yeah.
All her life she'd eaten nuts.
Mm.
And I was with her and she had some nuts and I had to take her to hospital. She had an anaphylactic shock. And she'd never, it was just, and when she was talking to the people and they said, yeah, you can suddenly become reactive to something at any point in life, which is really bizarre, isn't it? So
the main food that we consume in Sicily is pasta, bread, tomatoes, mozzarella, like pizza basically, and aubergines. That's in Sicily. I personally adore aubergines. And when I had a lactose intolerance test, we did test on all food, and I was intolerant to all of those, to wheat, to milk, well, dairy, to tomatoes, and to aubergines. So
I had a very similar thing in my late teens, early 20s, I think.
What was it?
And for years I didn't have, well, I still don't have milk, but I do have things that have milk in them, like ice cream, because ice cream doesn't count. And chocolate doesn't count either. But I actually bought some milk the other day because I wanted to make some pancakes, and there was some left over, and I thought, I'm going to try drinking it. And as soon as I put it in my mouth, I just thought, no, my body does not want this. It was okay in the pancake, but
because you change the composition of the protein. Because if you heat it up over 80 degrees, the protein breaks. So in my understanding, this is not, it was scientific, but has to explain, so it's not what I know, is that, well, in theory, we shouldn't have milk of any kind because the milk is the food for newborn babies. So we shouldn't digest that. So we are lactose intolerant by nature. But the fact that we included it in our diet, I think that we can have it if the protein of the milk breaks with the high temperature. So if it cooks.
So I wonder if that's how it works with ice cream, because it's lower temperature if it's frozen.
Well, before making, I never made ice cream, so I don't know if you have to boil it up and then it will cool down and then you put it in the freezer.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
No,
but
I've never made
it. I now drink whole milk, and before I drank the one with the blue top. What's it called?
Semi-skimmed or skimmed?
And I don't know why. With the semi-skimmed or the skimmed, I am not feeling well. With the whole milk, I'm fine.
So maybe it's the richness and having the fat in there, and
I don't know. And now I've been on the dairy milk, not non-dairy milk, for a few years. And then I decided to try normal milk. And now I cannot drink the fake milk anymore, the one without lactose. It tastes really chemical. So I feel that our body changes its habits given, in different time of our life.
absolutely.
We should really listen to what we feel we can and cannot eat, even children, I think.
You shouldn't eat children.
Yeah.
Okay. So just the final thing I wanted to say about menopause and symptoms and perimenopause is talk about it. Talk about it with adults, with children, with men, with employers. Talk about it. I think we all need to talk about it more. Oh, actually, there's if anybody's interested, there's a group have produced a booklet on menopause, and they're having a book launch, a free book launch at Five Leaves Bookshop. I've just booked it. When is it? It's in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, fantastic. If you have the link, you can pop it on the chat.
I can send you the link. Yeah. I'll send it to you afterwards.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that's my menopause, a personal perspective.
Yes.
And it gets better. I do want to stress that bit. There is a period when it's all a bit strange, but afterwards it's great.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I think before these conversations, I have never really paid attention to I never really thought about it. It feels to me as if when I was a child and I never thought about menstruation. You know, I feel
The
exactly
next thing, you don't think about it till you get there.
it's there is something I don't know of. Well, something that will happen, but I have no idea. Now it's better. Now it's better. It's more. I can prepare myself to welcoming this new part that will happen. We don't know when, right? Because we don't.
No.
It will happen, and I feel that you will know when it's going towards that direction. Can you? Did you have the perception of maybe getting there?
Only, I had no perception of whether I was close or not, but perimenopausal symptoms that I started to get, having had the conversation and been in that office with those older women, I was aware were leading up to it.
Yeah, so that thing, I think that really helps, having the confrontation with other people and discussing. That's where talking about it's really.
And I mentioned in the previous time that the average age in the UK is 52. So that's your menopause date. So that would be 51-ish. You would have stopped.
Yeah.
But then that's just an average. That's just an average. I happened to have been average. And I can't believe that. I've never been average for anything in my entire life, but I've managed to be average for my menopause. Whereas my grandmother and my aunt were 44, my mum was 37. I've had all the periods. It's not fair. My mum started her periods at 16 and finished at 37. She had hardly any periods in her life.
Yeah.
I've had loads.
Yeah.
But there we are.
We'll see. I don't remember the exact age I started. That's bizarre. I remember where I was, but I can't remember how old I was. I feel maybe 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah, I think I was 12 because we'd moved house when I was 11, and we were definitely in the second house or the next house.
Oh, I have no memories linked to. I only knew that I was in my nan's house. After that it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
I was younger than 15, or maybe 15, because I was in a certain school, and I remember that I was in a certain school. But then I don't know. I believe my mom she might remember the exact year, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was really rich of informations and things to remember, if we remember.
Remember. Yeah.
Very forgetful. The moment of pepper, that was the daily forgetful Val that you will encounter.
Brilliant. No one.
Yeah.
But I do want to stress that postmenopause is a whole new world out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Letitia. This was
okay. Thank you.
lovely to talk to you. Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.